Renna's boots echoed through the cavernous halls of the hollow court, each step a defiant heartbeat against the marble floors that splintered like old bones under her weight. The air was thick with the scent of decay, a mix of wilted roses and forgotten grandeur, wrapping around her like a shroud of memories she wished to forget. As an exiled sorceress, she'd vowed never to return to this place of gilded lies, but fate had twisted her path back, pulling her into a web of intrigue that felt both familiar and terrifying. Her palm burned with the spellbind tattoo, a mark of her fall from grace, and in the dim light, she traced its lines, wondering if this return was a chance for redemption or just another cruel joke from the universe. The corridors stretched endlessly before her, their once pristine walls now cracked and weathered, telling stories of an empire in decline. Tapestries hung in tatters, their golden threads dulled by time and neglect, while portraits of long-dead nobles watched her passage with hollow eyes that seemed to judge her every move. She remembered walking these same halls as a young court mage, full of hope and ambition, believing in the righteousness of the empire she served. Now, those memories felt like echoes from another lifetime, tainted by the bitter taste of betrayal and the harsh lessons of exile. The weight of her past pressed down on her shoulders like a physical burden, each step forward a battle against the voices in her head that whispered of failure and shame. She'd spent years in the wilderness, learning to survive on her own, mastering magic that the court had forbidden, and building walls around her heart to protect against further pain. Yet here she was, drawn back by a summons she couldn't ignore, a plea for help that had reached her even in her self-imposed isolation. The irony wasn't lost on her. The very people who had cast her out now needed her skills to save their precious heir. As she approached the inner sanctum, the familiar sensation of being watched crept up her spine, a reminder that trust was a luxury she could no longer afford. The court had always been a nest of vipers, where alliances shifted like sand and loyalty was a commodity to be bought and sold. She'd learned that lesson the hard way, and the scars it left ran deeper than any physical wound. But perhaps that was exactly what made her the right person for this task. She understood the darkness that lurked beneath the court's polished surface, and she had nothing left to lose. Cassian appeared from the shadows, leaning casually against a pillar, his charming smile masking the storm brewing in his eyes. He was the epitome of courtly poise, yet Renna sensed the suspicion radiating from him, like heat from a hidden fire. "Well, aren't you a sight for sore eyes?" he said with that smooth southern drawl, his words dripping with irony as he circled her, probing for weaknesses. Their initial exchange was a dance of words, each question from him met with her guarded responses, building a tension that crackled in the air. It was clear neither trusted the other, but in this decaying empire, alliances were forged in the strangest ways, and Renna couldn't ignore the flicker of shared burden in his gaze. His presence filled the space with an energy that was both magnetic and dangerous, the kind of charisma that could either save or damn depending on which side of it you found yourself. Cassian moved with the fluid grace of a predator, every gesture calculated, every word chosen with precision. Yet beneath the polished exterior, Renna glimpsed something raw and unguarded, a pain that mirrored her own, a weariness that spoke of battles fought in shadows and victories that felt more like defeats. He was a man caught between worlds, serving masters he didn't trust while harboring secrets that could destroy him. "You know," he continued, his voice taking on a more serious tone, "most people who leave this place don't come back voluntarily. Makes a man wonder what kind of desperation would drive someone to return to the scene of their greatest failure." His words were meant to sting, but Renna heard the genuine curiosity beneath them, the professional assessment of someone who'd learned to read people as a matter of survival. She met his gaze steadily, refusing to flinch from the challenge in his eyes, and for a moment, something passed between them, a recognition of kindred spirits trapped in circumstances beyond their control. As they delved deeper into conversation, Renna felt a reluctant spark. Perhaps it was the way his eyes held hers a beat too long, or the unspoken understanding of secrets that bound them. But a distant cry from the heir's chambers shattered the moment, reminding her of the urgency that brought her here. Her heart raced with a mix of fear and determination. Was this the beginning of her atonement, or would it drag her further into darkness? The mini-climax hit when Cassian stepped closer, his voice a low whisper. "You show up now, of all times. What are you really after?" His challenge lingered, stirring doubts and desires, leaving her to ponder the fine line between enemy and ally. The summoning room was a tomb of flickering candles and heavy drapes, the air thick and cloying, as if the very walls held their breath in anticipation. Renna knelt beside the heir's pale form, his shallow breaths a grim reminder of the curse eating away at him, while memories of her own exile crashed over her like waves. Betrayal by those she once trusted, the sting of injustice that had defined her life. She traced the dark veins on his skin, her fingers trembling, knowing that unraveling this mystery could either redeem her or condemn her further. The room's oppressive silence amplified every sound, from the drip of wax to the air's ragged gasps, making her question if destiny had brought her here for a purpose or merely to witness another tragedy. The heir lay motionless on the ornate bed, his once robust frame now gaunt and fragile, consumed by whatever dark magic had taken hold of him. His skin had taken on an ashen pallor, marked by those sinister black veins that pulsed with an otherworldly rhythm, as if something alien coursed through his bloodstream. Renna had seen curses before, but nothing quite like this. It was as if the very essence of life was being systematically drained from him, leaving behind an empty shell that barely clung to consciousness. Cassian lingered in the corners, his presence a constant shadow, his eyes sharp and assessing as he engaged her in a probing dialogue. "You're not the type to return without a plan," he murmured, his voice a blend of charm and caution, each word chipping away at her defenses. Renna responded with biting retorts, but beneath the surface, a mutual respect began to form, born from shared experiences of loss and loyalty. It was in these quiet moments that she glimpsed his vulnerabilities, the weight of his role as protector clashing with his own doubts, creating a fragile bridge between them amid the court's decay. Then came the twist. As Renna cast a simple diagnostic spell, a surge of energy revealed that the curse was no natural illness, but a deliberate act woven into the court's fabric, implicating powers far greater than she imagined. Cassian's hand steadied her as she reeled, his touch sparking an unexpected connection, but his darkened expression suggested he knew more than he admitted. The mini-climax peaked when the air stirred, uttering cryptic words that pointed to a conspiracy, leaving Renna breathless with the implications. What hidden truths had she uncovered, and how deep did Cassian's involvement run? The revelation hung in the air, a hook that pulled her toward the corridors beyond, where whispers awaited. Rain hammered against the stained-glass windows of the hollow court, transforming the hallways into a gloomy maze where every shadow seemed to harbor secrets. Renna wandered alone, the isolation weighing on her like a physical burden, her mind replaying the horrors of the summoning room and the fragile trust budding with Cassian. The marble walls, cracked and weathered, felt like the skin of an ancient beast, and she traced their imperfections, contemplating the justice of her return. Was this karma's way of balancing the scales, or was she doomed to repeat her mistakes? An American idiom crept into her thoughts. "You reap what you sow," a stark reminder that her past actions might be catching up faster than she could handle. Suddenly, voices pierced the downpour, Cassian's low murmur to a guard, laced with urgency and warning. She froze, heart pounding, straining to hear snippets like "keep an eye on her" and "trust no one easily." Stepping forward, she confronted him in a heated exchange, their words clashing like thunder, revealing layers of internal conflict and the court's hidden perils. Cassian's disarming smile returned, but it couldn't hide the guilt flickering in his eyes, and he quipped, "Eavesdropping will get you into hot water faster than you think," injecting a touch of humor to deflect her anger. Yet, beneath the banter, Renna sensed a deeper truth. His loyalties were torn, mirroring her own struggle with trust and redemption. The twist emerged when the guard mentioned a recent court betrayal, suggesting Cassian's warnings were part of a larger scheme that involved her directly. Rain streamed down her face as they argued, the storm outside echoing the chaos within, and in a moment of levity, Cassian joked about the weather being as fickle as court alliances, easing the tension just enough to humanize their spat. The mini-climax built to a head when he grabbed her arm, his grip firm but not harsh, whispering, "I'm not the enemy here, but that doesn't make me your friend." His words lingered, a mix of threat and plea, leaving her to question his motives as she stormed away. What dangers lurked in these halls, and could an uneasy alliance with Cassian be her salvation or her downfall? Flickering firelight danced across the walls of the forbidden library, casting long shadows that seemed to whisper ancient secrets, as Renna delved into dusty tomes with a hunger for knowledge. The air was heavy with the scent of aged paper and latent magic. Each page she turned a step closer to understanding the curse that plagued the air and, perhaps, her own exiled past. She murmured to herself, "Karma's a bitch, but maybe it's time to turn the tables," drawing on that familiar idiom to steel her resolve against the fear of what she might uncover. The library's isolation was a double-edged sword, offering solace but also amplifying her doubts about destiny's role in bringing her back to this place of buried truths. Cassian entered quietly, his presence announced by the creak of floorboards, and their eyes met in a charged silence that spoke volumes. He handed her a rare volume, his gesture reluctant yet telling, and they engaged in a low conversation, sharing fragments of history that hinted at a shared curiosity. "I didn't expect to find you here, digging through all this," he said, his tone casual but underscored with tension, as they uncovered connections between the curse and long-forgotten events. For a moment, a fragile camaraderie emerged, but trust remained elusive, with Cassian's guarded responses revealing his own burdens and fears. The twist came when Renna found a passage describing an artifact tied to the curse, its description matching something she'd seen in her exile, suggesting a personal link that made her blood run cold. Cassian's reaction was telling. He tensed, stepping back as if burned, and in a bid for lightness he joked, "If we're waking the dead, we better have a good exit strategy," his humor cutting through the gravity. The mini-climax intensified when their hands brushed over the book, a spark of magic jolting them both, and he pulled away, asking, "Are you sure you want to open this Pandora's box?" His question echoed in the dim light, leaving her torn between fear and fascination. The heir's chamber was shrouded in a haze of herbal smoke and despair, the air thick with the bitter tang of remedies that failed to stem the tide of his illness. Renna knelt beside him, her spells wavering as she fought against the curse, each failure a sharp reminder of her own inadequacies and the exile that had stripped her of confidence. She thought of justice, how what goes around comes around seemed to apply to everyone but the powerful, and wondered if her efforts here were a path to redemption or just delaying the inevitable. Cassian's presence was a constant, his hand on her shoulder a gesture of comfort that bridged their growing connection. As they shared honest words about their personal struggles, his burden of loyalty, her isolation and exile. Their dialogue deepened, revealing layers of emotion, with Cassian admitting, "It's like trying to hold back the ocean with a sieve," an idiom that captured the futility of their situation. In this intimate space, mistrust softened, but shadows of doubt lingered, especially when the heir's delirious mutterings implicated Cassian in ways that made Renna's stomach twist. The twist hit when she realized the curse's progression was accelerated by a ritual she recognized from her past, linking it directly to her own history and raising questions about coincidence versus fate. To break the heaviness, a clumsy attendant entered, spilling herbs and muttering, "Sorry, I'm all thumbs today," providing a moment of comic relief that humanized the scene. The mini-climax peaked when Cassian knelt beside her, their faces close, and vowed, "We'll face this together, but only if you're all in." His words were a challenge and a comfort, leaving her to grapple with the implications as the chamber's air grew heavier. Under the silver moon, the hollow court's gardens bloomed with thorny roses, their petals brushing against Renna's skin like soft accusations, offering a fleeting escape from the court's suffocating grip. She sought solitude here, but the night air carried whispers of her inner turmoil, the spell bind on her palm pulsing with unresolved magic, reminding her that destiny often demanded sacrifices for redemption. Cassian found her, his approach gentle, and they sat together, the moonlight casting an ethereal pallor that mirrored the vulnerability in their words. He shared stories of his lost family, using phrases like "left holding the bag" to describe the isolation he felt, while Renna opened up about her exile, their exchange weaving a tapestry of shared grief and the universal quest for forgiveness. As they talked, the beauty of the garden contrasted the rot within the court, symbolizing their own fragile bond, but mistrust still simmered beneath the surface. The twist occurred when a rose thorn pricked her finger, the blood glowing with an unexpected magic that hinted at a deeper connection between them, one that Cassian recoiled from in fear. In a moment of levity, he chuckled, "Even nature's got a sense of humor, doesn't it?" lightening the mood and revealing his human side amid the seriousness. The mini-climax built when Cassian confessed his growing feelings, saying, "I didn't ask for this, but here we are, caught in the same storm," his voice raw with emotion. The words hung in the night air, leaving Renna breathless and questioning the cost of this intimacy. What dangers would their vulnerability invite, and could a connection forged in moonlight survive the dawn of harsher realities? Weeks had passed since their moonlit confession, and now the court's dining hall buzzed with the clink of glasses and forced merriment, a veneer of normalcy that chafed against Renna's skin like an ill-fitting dress. She sat among the nobles, feeling like an outsider, her thoughts drifting to themes of justice and how the elite often escaped the consequences that crushed people like her. Cassian's banter across the table was a lifeline, his teasing remarks, such as calling her as subtle as a freight train, drawing reluctant smiles and highlighting their shared discomfort in this hypocritical world. Their conversation flowed with a mix of humor and depth, strengthening their alliance through mutual disdain for the court's games. But the evening took a darker turn when a noble's offhand comment about her exile stirred old wounds, the air thickening with unspoken accusations. Cassian deflected with wit, saying, "Let's not wash our dirty laundry in public," a quip that brought a brief laugh and eased the tension, reminding them both of the absurdity in their predicament. The twist came when Renna overheard a whispered plot targeting the heir, linking it to her own past and raising the stakes of their presence here. Was this gathering a trap, or an opportunity to strike back? The mini-climax escalated during a tense exchange with a suspicious guest, where Cassian's protective stance and Renna's sharp retorts showcased their evolving bond, ending with a shared glance that spoke of unspoken fears. As the dinner wound down, she slipped away, her mind racing with possibilities. What threats hid behind the smiles, and how far would she and Cassian go to uncover the truth? The night beckoned toward the stirring magic that awaited in the hidden alcoves. In a secluded alcove deep within the court's underbelly, the air hummed with static energy, magic stirring like a beast awakening from slumber, as Renna and Cassian delved into experiments that blurred the lines between curiosity and danger. She demonstrated a minor spell, her hands weaving light with practiced ease, but Cassian's watchful gaze held a storm of conflict, his body tense as he grappled with fears of betrayal and his own hidden agenda. Their dialogue was sharp and intense, short sentences flying like arrows. "This could backfire badly," he warned, invoking the idiom "playing with fire" to emphasize the risk, while Renna shot back, "Better than doing nothing and watching it all burn." As the magic built, their exchange revealed deeper emotions, with Cassian admitting to doubts about his loyalty to the court, mirroring Renna's struggles with her exiled identity and the concept of destiny. The twist struck when the spell misfired, unleashing a vision that tied Cassian to a long-buried secret of the curse, one that connected directly to Renna's past and left them both reeling. In a moment of levity to cut the tension, Cassian quipped, "Well, that went south faster than a bad blind date," his humor a brief shield against the chaos. The mini-climax peaked when they locked eyes amid the flickering lights, Cassian confessing, "I can't afford to lose control again," his words raw and vulnerable, forging a tentative trust. The energy subsided, but the implications lingered, leaving Renna to wonder what other surprises this magic held. How would this revelation reshape their alliance, and what new perils would it unleash in the days to come? Days later, the dim light of the interrogation room closed in on Renna like a vice, the spymaster's questions probing her soul with relentless precision, each word a dagger aimed at her defenses. Her pulse raced, memories of her exile flooding back, as she fought to maintain composure amid accusations that painted her as a threat to the court. Cassian intervened with a protective ferocity, his stance a barrier between her and the interrogator, their whispered argument revealing the dual nature of his role, loyal servant or silent rebel. "You're walking a thin line," he hissed at her, using the idiom to highlight the danger, while Renna countered with her own barbs, exposing the cracks in his facade. The tension escalated as they navigated the spymaster's traps, their bond tested by revelations that hinted at a larger conspiracy involving the court's elite. In a moderate moment of comic relief, Cassian deflected a particularly aggressive question with a dry joke. "If we're confessing sins, I left my list at home," lightening the atmosphere just enough to humanize the ordeal. The twist came when a slip of the tongue from the spymaster implicated Cassian in past deceptions, forcing Renna to question his true intentions and how they aligned with her quest for justice. The mini-climax built to a crescendo when Cassian stood tall, declaring, "She's under my watch now," his voice steady but his eyes betraying doubt, creating a pivotal moment of fragile solidarity. As they were dismissed, the room's oppressive air lingered, leaving Renna to ponder the cost of their growing closeness. Who could be trusted in this nest of vipers, and what consequences would their defiance bring? By the soft glow of candlelight in a hidden chamber, Renna performed a healing ritual for the air, her hands emanating a faint light that danced like fireflies in the dark, each incantation a step into the unknown. The air was thick with incense and anticipation, her mind a whirlwind of emotions as she channeled energy, recalling the isolation of her exile and the burning desire for redemption. Cassian assisted reluctantly, his fingers brushing hers in moments of unintended intimacy, their conversation flowing in long, melodic sentences that explored their vulnerabilities and the weight of their shared burdens. "We're dancing on the edge of something big," he said, his voice laced with caution, as they worked in harmony despite the risks. The ritual's rhythm was hypnotic, but beneath it, themes of justice and destiny wove through their dialogue, with Renna pondering how karma might finally balance the scales. The twist unfolded when the magic revealed a personal scar on Cassian, a mark from a similar ritual in his past that had ended in tragedy, linking their stories in ways neither expected. To ease the intensity, Cassian offered a light-hearted quip. "If this works, I'll buy you a drink. If not, we're both in deep water," injecting humor that humanized their dire situation. The mini-climax peaked when their hands clasped fully, the energy surging and exposing raw emotions, Cassian whispering, "I didn't think I'd care this much," a confession that deepened their bond. As the ritual concluded, a sense of fragile hope emerged, but so did new questions. What truths had they awakened, and how would this closeness affect their journey through the fractured trust ahead? Morning light filtered through the cracked windows of the court, casting jagged shadows that mirrored the fractures in Renna and Cassian's relationship, as she discovered a lie he'd told about his involvement in the court's affairs. Their heated exchange filled the room, voices rising and falling like a storm, exploring themes of deception and the pain it inflicted on those seeking redemption. Renna's heart ached with betrayal, her exile's lessons and mistrust fueling her anger, while Cassian defended himself with pleas for understanding, admitting that sometimes you have to bend the truth to survive, an idiom that underscored his desperation. As they argued, deeper layers emerged, Cassian's fear of losing control mirroring Renna's struggle with forgiveness, and in a moment of pause, the weight of their words hung heavy, allowing for reflection on how destiny often used pain as a catalyst for growth. The twist came when Cassian confessed a painful secret from his past, one that explained his deception and tied it to the curse, forcing Renna to confront her own flaws. Moderate comic relief arrived when he tried to lighten the mood with a self-deprecating joke. "I'm not usually this good at messing things up," but it couldn't fully dispel the tension. The mini-climax built to an emotional peak when they stood face to face, Cassian saying, "I never meant to hurt you, but we're in this together now," his voice breaking the silence. The revelation left Renna torn, her resolve tested. Could they mend what was broken, or had this fracture irreparably damaged their alliance? Weeks later, the forgotten archives beckoned with the musty scent of aged paper and dust, a treasure trove of history that Renna sifted through with determined focus, each document a piece of the puzzle surrounding the heir's curse. Cassian joined her, their partnership growing stronger despite recent strains, as they shared stories of loss and discovery, his voice carrying the weight of a man burdened by loyalty. "It's like searching for a needle in a haystack," he remarked, using the idiom to express the frustration, while Renna connected it to her exile, pondering how justice often hid in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Their quiet interaction fostered a sense of camaraderie, with moments of laughter when Cassian found a ridiculous old text and quipped, "If this is the key to saving us, we're in more trouble than I thought," providing light relief amid the seriousness. The twist emerged when Renna uncovered a document that linked their individual pasts to the curse's origin, a revelation that suggested fate had orchestrated their meeting for a greater purpose. This connection deepened their bond, but also raised new fears about what else might be uncovered. The mini-climax intensified when Cassian shared a personal story of loss that mirrored the Empire's decline, his words poignant and raw, leading to a moment of mutual understanding. As they pored over the pages, Renna felt a shift in their dynamic. What united them in this quest, and how would these discoveries alter the course of their lives? At the masked ball, the music swelled like a living entity, colors blurring in a whirlwind of silk and secrets. As Renna and Cassian moved through the crowd, their steps a careful metaphor for the caution in their relationship. The air was alive with laughter and whispers, but beneath it, Renna sensed the undercurrents of danger, her exile's lessons making her hyper-aware of hidden threats. Their dance brought them close, bodies swaying in sync, yet their conversation remained guarded, touching on simmering longings and the risks of vulnerability. "We're treading on thin ice here," Cassian murmured, the idiom capturing the precariousness of their situation, as he shared glimpses of his inner turmoil. As the night progressed, subtle touches and glances revealed deeper emotions, but trust was still a fragile thing, tested by the court's watchful eyes. The twist came when a masked figure approached, dropping hints of a plot that involved both of them, tying back to the curse and forcing a re-evaluation of alliances. In a moment of levity, Cassian whispered a joke about the ridiculous masks. "Half the people here are hiding more than their faces," lightening the mood and humanizing their predicament. The mini-climax peaked during an intense spin on the dance floor, their eyes locking in a silent promise, Cassian saying, "This could be our last chance to walk away," his words charged with meaning. The music faded into the background, leaving Renna to wonder what secrets the night would unveil. How would this dance of deception influence their bond, and what confrontations awaited in the heir's confession? In the heir's chamber, shadows stretched long and ominous as the heir lay weak, his whispers cutting through the silence like shards of glass, revealing fragments of a truth that could shatter everything. Renna listened intently, her heart aching with empathy, while Cassian observed from the periphery, his silence a wall of unspoken support. The air was heavy with the scent of illness and regret, and she contemplated the themes of destiny and karma, how the heir's suffering mirrored her own path of exile and the quest for redemption. Their quiet vigil allowed for reflection, with Cassian offering subtle gestures that strengthened their connection, even as doubts lingered. The twist unfolded when the heir's confession implicated not just the court, but Cassian directly in a way that stunned Renna, forcing her to question the foundations of their alliance. To balance the drama, a brief moment of humor arose when Cassian rolled his eyes at a nonsensical ramble from the heir, muttering, "If that's code, I'm lost in translation," easing the tension slightly. The mini-climax built when Cassian stepped forward, his voice steady, assuring Renna with a look that said more than words, "We're in this deeper than I thought, but I'm not backing down." As the heir's words trailed off, a sense of urgency gripped them both. What new dangers had been unleashed by this revelation, and how would it test their resolve in the rising tensions to come? Days after the confession, the courtyard became a battleground of emotions under a stormy sky, rain lashing down as Renna and Cassian argued with raw honesty, their voices carried away by the wind. The air was charged with electricity, mirroring the tension in their relationship, as they confronted issues of trust and loyalty, Renna drawing on her exile to question his every move. "You're acting like a cat on a hot tin roof," she accused, using the idiom to express his nervousness, while Cassian defended himself with equal passion, revealing layers of fear and commitment. The argument delved into universal dilemmas, like the cost of truth in a world of lies, and how destiny often forced difficult choices. The twist came when a flash of lightning illuminated a hidden symbol on Cassian's coat, linking him to an old enemy of Renna's, escalating their conflict. In a moderate comic relief, Cassian quipped about the weather, "If this rain doesn't stop, we'll all be swimming out of here," attempting to diffuse the anger. The mini-climax peaked when they reached a moment of truth, Cassian grabbing her hands and saying, "I choose you over all of it," a declaration that solidified their alliance despite the odds. As the storm raged on, Renna wondered if this raw honesty could withstand the chaos. What trials would their unity face in the unleashed magic that threatened to consume them? In the secluded chamber, forbidden magic erupted like a volcano, lights flickering wildly as Renna and Cassian worked frantically to contain it, their hands clasped in a desperate bid for control. The air crackled with energy, each surge a reminder of the risks they took, as Renna's spellbind pulsed with power drawn from her painful past. Cassian's voice cut through the chaos, urging caution with phrases like "We've bitten off more than we can chew," while they shared fears and hopes in the face of this supernatural storm. The magic's intensity forced them to confront their deepest vulnerabilities, strengthening their bond even as it threatened to break them. The twist revealed a hidden link between the magic and Cassian's family legacy, connecting it to the curse in ways that shocked them both. To add a touch of levity, Cassian joked, "If this is what adventure feels like, I prefer staying home," his humor a brief anchor in the turmoil. The mini-climax exploded when they combined their strengths to quell the energy, a moment of profound connection that left them breathless and changed. As the chamber settled, questions lingered. What had this magic awakened, and how would it alter their path? The echoes faded, pulling them toward a night of personal revelations. That evening, by a crackling fire in a remote corner of the court, Cassian opened up about his binding to the king, his words heavy with regret and poetic imagery of chains that bound the soul. Renna responded with her own tale of exile, their dialogue weaving metaphors of freedom and captivity, exploring how destiny often trapped people in cycles of pain. The fire's warmth contrasted the cold truths they shared, building emotional intimacy through shared stories of loss and redemption. The twist came when Cassian admitted a failed attempt to escape his oath, directly tying into Renna's journey and suggesting a fated intersection. In a light moment, he quipped about their lives feeling like a never-ending roller coaster, easing the intensity. The mini-climax peaked with a heartfelt vow, leaving them closer but aware of the risks. What new threats would their honesty invite, and could they break free from their chains? Weeks passed, and in a shadowed alley, Renna was ambushed by court spies, their attack a brutal reminder of the dangers they faced, as she fought back with spells born of desperation. Cassian's timely intervention saved her, his actions fierce and protective, revealing the depth of his commitment. The twist implicated a trusted figure in the betrayal, raising stakes and forcing reevaluation. Humor and a moment of emotional peak solidified their bond, leaving questions about loyalty. As they escaped, the night whispered of unraveling truths ahead. The attackers had been professionals, their movements coordinated, and their magic sophisticated enough to nearly overwhelm her defenses. It was clear that whoever had sent them knew her capabilities intimately, had studied her techniques and prepared countermeasures. The realization that her enemies understood her so well was more terrifying than the physical assault itself. It meant that her exile hadn't been the end of their interest in her, but merely a pause in a longer game. Cassian's rescue had been perfectly timed, almost as if he'd been expecting the attack. The thought sent a chill through her even as she felt grateful for his intervention. Was his presence coincidental, or had he somehow known she would be targeted? The questions multiplied in her mind, each one adding another layer of complexity to their already tangled relationship. In the heir's chamber, Renna's vision spell shimmered, uncovering the curse's roots in ancient injustices, with Cassian as an unwitting catalyst. The revelation connected to themes of karma, and a witty remark provided relief. Their shared understanding marked a mini-climax, teasing future consequences. What would this knowledge cost them? The vision faded, drawing them to intimate moments. The magical vision that erupted from her spell was unlike anything she'd experienced before, a torrent of images and sensations that swept through her consciousness like a raging river. She saw the curse's creation decades ago, witnessed the careful planning and malevolent intent that had gone into its crafting. But most shocking of all, she saw Cassian as a young man, participating in rituals he clearly didn't understand, his innocent face a stark contrast to the dark magic swirling around him. The vision revealed that the curse wasn't just targeting the heir. It was part of a larger pattern of revenge that stretched back generations, a carefully orchestrated plan to destroy the royal bloodline from within. Cassian's family had been manipulated into participating, their loyalty and service used against them in ways they never could have imagined. The weight of this knowledge settled on both of them like a physical burden, changing everything they thought they knew about their situation. As the vision faded, Cassian's face was pale with shock and recognition. "I remember some of those rituals," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "My father said they were blessings, protection spells for the royal family. I never questioned." His words trailed off as the full implications hit him, the realization that his family's devotion had been twisted into a weapon against everything they'd sworn to protect. Later that night, in a moonlit room, Renna and Cassian shared a tender kiss, the world narrowing to soft touches and whispered breaths, a shift from mistrust to deep connection. Long sentences captured the melancholic beauty, but a magical link revealed potential downfall. Humor and an emotional peak left doubts. As they parted, Renna wondered if this intimacy could endure. What tests awaited in the Empire's fracture? The kiss had been inevitable, building through weeks of shared danger and growing trust, but it still caught them both off guard with its intensity. In that moment, all the walls they'd built around their hearts crumbled, leaving them vulnerable and exposed in ways that were both terrifying and exhilarating. The moonlight streaming through the window cast everything in silver, making the moment feel dreamlike and unreal. But even as they held each other, Renna could feel the magical connection between them strengthening, creating bonds that went deeper than mere attraction or affection. It was as if their souls were recognizing each other, calling out across the void of loneliness that had defined both their lives. Yet with that connection came new dangers. Their enemies could use their feelings against them, and the magic that linked them might prove to be as much a curse as a blessing. Cassian pulled back slightly, his eyes searching her face in the dim light. "This changes everything," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "If they know about us, if they realize what we mean to each other." He didn't need to finish the sentence. They both understood that love was a luxury they might not be able to afford, not in a world where every emotion could be weaponized against them. Days later, chaos erupted in the court halls, accusations flying as Renna and Cassian stood united. A betrayal escalated tensions, with humor providing balance. Their stand marked a mini-climax, questioning their bond's strength. As voices clashed, Renna pondered the risks ahead. The court had descended into madness, with nobles choosing sides and old alliances crumbling under the weight of revealed secrets. The heir's condition had become a rallying point for different factions, each claiming to know the true cause of his illness and the best path forward. In the midst of this chaos, Renna and Cassian found themselves at the center of a storm they'd helped create, their investigation having uncovered truths that powerful people would kill to keep hidden. The accusations came from all directions. Some claimed Renna had returned to finish what she'd started years ago, while others suggested Cassian was a traitor who'd been working against the crown all along. The irony wasn't lost on either of them that in trying to save the heir, they'd managed to destabilize the entire court structure. But perhaps that had been necessary. Sometimes you had to tear down a rotten foundation before you could build something new. Standing together in the face of the mob's anger, they presented a united front that surprised even themselves. The trust they'd built through shared trials and revealed secrets had created something stronger than either had expected. Whatever came next, they would face it together, and that knowledge gave them strength even as the world seemed to be falling apart around them. In the throne room, Renna exposed the cursed artifact, Cassian's outburst confronting loyalties. The twist revealed family ties, heightening emotion. A mini-climax tested their alliance, leaving uncertainty. As truth burned, Renna wondered about destruction or renewal. The Heart of Shadows lay before them on the ancient throne, its dark surface pulsing with malevolent energy that made the air itself feel thick and oppressive. This was the source of the curse, the focal point of decades of planning and hatred. As Renna approached it, she could feel its power calling to her, promising knowledge and strength beyond imagination. But she'd learned enough about dark magic to recognize the lies it whispered, the false promises that led only to corruption and despair. Cassian's reaction to seeing the artifact was visceral and immediate. His face went white with recognition, and his hands began to shake as memories flooded back. "My grandfather," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the artifact's humming. "He was the one who found it, who brought it to court. He thought he was serving the crown, but they used him, used our whole family as pawns in their game." The revelation that Cassian's family had been manipulated for generations added another layer of tragedy to an already complex situation. They weren't just fighting against a curse. They were battling the consequences of decades of deception and betrayal that had corrupted the very foundations of the empire. The question now was whether they could break the cycle, or if they were doomed to become just another chapter in this long, dark story. The next day, amid rubble, Renna grappled with guilt, Cassian's comfort aiding reflection. A survivor held key information, with humor easing pain. The mini-climax began healing, teasing future promises. Could they rebuild from ashes? The destruction of the Heart of Shadows had come at a terrible cost. The magical backlash had torn through the court like a hurricane, leaving buildings damaged and lives shattered. Renna couldn't shake the feeling that she was responsible for the chaos, that her actions had caused more harm than good. The weight of unintended consequences pressed down on her like a physical burden, making it hard to breathe, hard to think clearly about what came next. But Cassian's presence beside her was a constant source of strength, his quiet support helping her process the guilt and find a path forward. He understood better than anyone the burden of making difficult choices, of having to act without knowing all the consequences. Together, they began the slow work of helping the survivors, of trying to piece together some semblance of order from the chaos they'd helped create. The survivor who approached them was an elderly court scribe, his robes torn and his face streaked with dust, but his eyes bright with purpose. "I saw what you did," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "The artifact, I've been researching it for years, trying to understand its true nature. What you've accomplished here, it's more important than you know. The curse wasn't just affecting the heir, it was slowly poisoning the entire realm." Weeks later, in overgrown gardens, they discussed rebirth, a new thread emerging. Poetic imagery and humor solidified their bond. The mini-climax offered hope, leaving questions about what lay ahead. The gardens had begun to recover from the magical devastation, new growth pushing up through the scorched earth in a testament to life's resilience. Renna found herself drawn to these signs of renewal, seeing in them a reflection of her own journey from exile to redemption. The court would never be the same, but perhaps that was for the best. Sometimes destruction was necessary before true healing could begin. Cassian walked beside her through the recovering landscape, his presence a comfort and a promise of the future they might build together. They'd survived the worst of the crisis, but new challenges were already emerging. Reports were coming in from the outer provinces of strange magical disturbances, suggesting that the Heart of Shadows had been just one piece of a larger puzzle they'd yet to fully understand. "You know," Cassian said, breaking the comfortable silence between them, "I never thought I'd be grateful for a curse, but if it hadn't brought you back—" He let the sentence hang unfinished, but Renna understood. Sometimes the worst things that happened to you led to the best things in your life, and their journey together had proven that even in the darkest circumstances, hope could flourish. The new threat they detected was subtle but persistent, a creeping darkness that seemed to be spreading from the ruins of the old magical sites, as if the destruction of the Heart of Shadows had released something that had been contained for centuries. It would require all their combined skills and knowledge to understand and combat, but for the first time since her return, Renna felt truly ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. As dawn broke, Renna prepared to leave, Cassian's farewell conveying forgiveness. A letter hinted at unfinished business, emphasizing closure. The mini-climax provided hope of reunion, reflecting on Journey's end. The decision to leave hadn't been easy, but Renna knew that her work at the Hollow Court was finished. The immediate crisis had passed, and the court needed time to heal and rebuild without the constant reminder of the chaos her presence seemed to attract. But this departure felt different from her exile. This time, she was leaving by choice, with her honor restored and her purpose fulfilled. Cassian's farewell was bittersweet, filled with unspoken promises and the hope of future reunions. He pressed a sealed letter into her hands, his fingers lingering on hers for a moment longer than necessary. "For when you're ready to come home," he said simply, and she understood that home wasn't a place anymore. It was wherever they could be together. The letter contained more than just personal sentiments. It held an official pardon from the crown, a recognition of her service and sacrifice in saving the realm. But more importantly, it contained an invitation to return whenever she chose, not as an exile seeking redemption, but as a valued ally and friend. The circle of her journey was complete, but it was also the beginning of something new. As she walked away from the Hollow Court for what might be the last time, Renna felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in years. The spellbind tattoo on her palm had faded to a barely visible mark, its power spent in the service of something greater than herself. She'd found her redemption not in grand gestures or magical displays, but in the simple act of choosing to help when help was needed, regardless of the personal cost. Months after, Renna reflected in a northern province, Cassian's letter bringing warmth. The story ended with quiet hope, wind sighing like a farewell. The cottage she'd found in the northern mountains was simple but comfortable, surrounded by wildflowers and ancient trees that whispered secrets in languages older than the empire itself. Here, far from the intrigues and dangers of court life, she'd begun to build a new kind of existence, one based on helping the local villagers with their problems, teaching young mages to control their gifts, and slowly healing from the wounds that years of exile and conflict had left on her soul. Cassian's letters arrived regularly, bringing news of the court's recovery and his own efforts to reform the systems that had allowed such corruption to flourish. The heir had made a full recovery and was proving to be a wise and just ruler, guided by the hard-learned lessons of his near-death experience. The empire was changing slowly but surely, becoming something better than it had been before. But more than the political news, Cassian's letters brought warmth and connection, reminders that she wasn't alone in the world anymore. He wrote of his plans to visit when his duties allowed, of the future they might build together when the time was right. For now, they were content to love each other from a distance, secure in the knowledge that what they'd built together was strong enough to survive separation and time. As Renna folded the latest letter and tucked it away with the others, she smiled at the irony of her situation. She'd returned to the Hollow Court seeking redemption, and found something far more valuable. She'd found herself, and in doing so, she'd found love. The wind sighed through the trees outside her window, carrying with it the promise of spring and new beginnings, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, Renna was truly at peace. As the echoes of Renna and Cassian's story fade, pause and consider your own life. Have you ever navigated the murky waters of trust and redemption, or felt the pull of destiny in unexpected alliances? This tale mirrors the universal struggles we all face, reminding us that even in decay, hope can bloom. What insights will you take away, and how might they shape your path? The journey from exile to redemption is never a straight line. It's filled with setbacks and revelations, moments of despair and unexpected joy. Renna's story reminds us that sometimes we must lose everything to find what truly matters, that the greatest magic isn't in the spells we cast, but in the connections we forge with others. Her relationship with Cassian proved that trust, once broken, can be rebuilt stronger than before, and that love can flourish even in the darkest circumstances. The themes of justice and karma that ran throughout their adventure speak to something fundamental in the human experience. Our deep need to believe that actions have consequences, that wrongs can be righted, and that redemption is possible for those willing to fight for it. Renna's exile taught her humility and strength, while her return gave her the chance to use those hard-won lessons in service of something greater than herself. Perhaps most importantly, their story shows us that destiny isn't something that happens to us. It's something we create through our choices, our courage, and our willingness to stand up for what's right even when the cost is high. In a world that often seems chaotic and unfair, Renna and Cassian's journey offers hope that individual actions can make a difference, that love can triumph over hatred, and that even the most broken things can be made whole again. Share your reflections in the comments below. Did this story resonate with you? If so, hit that subscribe button for more captivating narratives that delve into the heart of human emotion. Let's keep the conversation alive. Your thoughts could inspire the next chapter in our shared journey.